you all for letting me present here at this great conference. Stork, I just want to spend one slide for those of you who just don't know this company yet, and then I'm going to get straight into this hydrogen, which is going to be titled Greener Than Green. But here, first on Stork itself. So Stork is a company that provides operation and maintenance services across multiple industries. So offshore, refining, manufacturing, storage, and of course in the renewable industries. And because we have over 19,000 boots on the ground people at these facilities, this gives us, of course, a great opportunity to decarbonize these assets, and also by providing cost-effective O&M services, helps support the energy transition. But again, in this presentation, I'm only going to talk about hydrogen. And how am I going to do that? Well, first I'm just going to briefly reflect a little bit. We've had a great conference and there are some two market things I'd like to pick out. Then I'm going to share something that I think is going to be new to a lot of people. At least I've missed it completely in all the other presentations. And lastly, I'll give you guys a recap. So moving into the review. First of all, applause for this whole conference here, all the fantastic initiatives and commitments that I've heard in the last day, and also in this morning session here. And two examples I want to pick out, and one, both actually from Trinidad, and one is NewGen's 27,200 ton per year green hydrogen project. I mean, that requires an electrolyzer of 180 megawatts. Now that's huge. Now these numbers, we've been hearing so many numbers, but let's put this in perspective. Currently, the world's biggest hydrogen electrolyzer is Air Liquide's 20 megawatt facility in Bécancour facility in Canada. So this is really, this is stepping up. And also the Lighthouse Source project from BP, 92 megawatts. And if you look at the size, it covers nearly 2.5 square kilometers. That's pretty sizable. That said, there are bigger ones out there. The world's largest solar field out there, as well as you can see, about 25 times as, 20 times as big. But it's still sizable. But now since we're talking about scale, let's scale this a little bit. The 27,200 tons per year feels like a lot. It sounds a lot, and it is a lot. But if you look at the whole production of current hydrogen in Trinidad, that's 1.8 million tons. Now imagine if we could make that green. What would that do? Well, first of all, 25% of the natural gas from Trinidad goes into making hydrogen. So if we make it via a different route, that's a lot more natural gas sales possible. Also, that opportunity to sell green methanol ammonia, and as was mentioned by other speakers today, that's going to be, first it might command a premium, but at some point in time, it's an expectation where you're going to really be hit by tariffs, big tax tariffs. And lastly, this will really put great strides into fulfilling Trinidad's Paris commitments. If we manage to make that 1.8 million tons per year green. But now let's see, how do we produce it? Say that we will produce it via solar-fed electrolysis. You would need 310 square kilometers of solar fields. And last I checked, the Tobago Island is about 300 square kilometers. And add to that, I believe there are ambitions to grow that production. And the power station, there will be electrification, there will be more e-boilers, there will be less steam turbines and more electrical drives. There are going to be much more electrical cars. So, this is just the start of a lot more of electrification, again, requiring even more hydrogen out there potentially. So, you could easily be looking at 410 square kilometers, and that's encroaching close to 10% of the Trinidad surface. So that's huge. So I would like to just plant the thought out there. We definitely need additional sources of hydrogen. And I purposely say additional, and I'm really going to emphasize that a lot. Additional, because we must absolutely continue with these projects. But there must be other opportunities as well, because just solar is not going to hack it. So moving on to a different topic, but you'll notice it's related. There's a different problem in Trinidad, for example, and that's waste. And if you just take a look at it, 700,000 tons of waste per year gets added to those landfills. And it's costing the government a lot of money. And smell, and there are fires. And not just that, but also over time, fugitive emissions are simply coupled to landfills. I mean, it's just the way it is. Methane gets created, and methane, as we all know, is 25 times more potent from a global gas house perspective than CO2. I'm picking on Trinidad here, but come on. Guyana, you're out there too. I know that you guys also have a great problem with waste. You've just opened up a new facility. That's basically, 4 times as large as the facility that you currently already have. So you're anticipating a lot of waste. And that too will be smelly. It's going to decompose. It's going to create fugitive emissions. So the thought I want to park here, avoiding landfill would be a very welcome gift. So reviewing a little bit about this first little section here, I mean, we need alternatives next to electrolysis. Avoiding landfill would be a welcome gift. And if also chip in the little piece of knowledge that of all the places that you can get hydrogen, that little atom, and turn it into the molecule hydrogen, the worst place actually you can get it from is water, because that is such a strong bond. And actually dislodging hydrogen, that little hydrogen atom, out of hydrocarbons is actually quite easy. So what if we could produce low-cost hydrogen from landfill? Take a step back, there are 2 ways to do that. And again, strangely enough, in all the overviews I see, whenever there's talk about green hydrogen, it's always about electrolysis, but these exist as well, the waste to hydrogen paths. And the 2 options, one is gasification. It's been around for quite some time, but I must say there are some inherent toxic fly ash and hazardous solid waste streams associated to that. And also the fluidized bed, it requires quite some feedstock prep, not insurmountable. And there are quite some interesting technologies like gas that are really helping out there. So don't discount this one yet, but just sake of time, I'm going to focus on this other one, on plasmification. And again, I haven't heard it talked about, but we really need to add it to the mix. So let me explain a little bit more. So this is where the sharing comes into the presentation here. I'm going to share a little bit about a company that our Stark has an alliance with. It's a technology provider from California. They're called Selena Global. And I'm going to split this into first some information about the feedstock reception, then the plasmification at the heart of it, and then the green hydrogen production at the end. So let's start off with the feedstock. What's a feedstock? Big surprise, urban solid waste. Could be non-recyclable paper, it could be waste, it could be just residential waste, it could be anything. And apart from producing, that very valuable green hydrogen, it also helps avoid the landfill and therefore a future source of fugitive emissions. When? 24/7. So not dependent upon intermittently available solar and wind electricity. Where from? Landfill. So not massive new wind farms and solar fields. And lastly, just how much? The standard unit of design 1, build many will take 120 tons per day. And that's about 6 to 10 truckloads per unit. And what do you do with that? You put that into the heart of the system, the gasification, the plasmification, sorry, what I'm saying. Now, typical gasification is about between 600 to 1,000 degrees. But plasmification really ups the game and starts to work at about 35 to 4,000 degrees. So this completely disintegrates the whole feedstock into molecular compounds. So this is not combustion, and therefore there's no toxic ash and no solid waste. The only waste that's there is basically vitrified slag. It's inert, non-leachable, can safely be used as an aggregate in construction. And is this new technology? No, it's actually very proven. Okay, well, it was new technology a few decades ago, and this was when NASA was looking for a means to test the ceramic shields on the space shuttle, and they used American taxpayer money for that, and they developed the whole technology, and in good fashion, they gave the taxpayers back the technology, and there was a big test site in Pennsylvania, and this is where, amongst others, Selena tested and tested and tested to get it right. And they weren't the only companies out there testing it, so not surprisingly, and here's just a little overview of some of the facilities out there that have plasmatification. I mean, this is really, and I've purposely taken some old ones just to show, this isn't something that was recently developed. They've been around and they keep on producing. And not in batch wise. A lot of people think plasmatification is so hot, the whole thing must melt upon itself. No, continuous operation, 8,000 hours per year. That's near continuous. And you can see multiple industries, countries, and the one for Selena, it's an atmospheric process, which of course reduces the operational, the capex, but also just for maintenance. We can just take out an electrode, replace it with a spare without having to shut down the facility, and therefore really achieve that very high uptime. Now let's look at the last bit, the production. So out comes the syngas, and this syngas is exactly the same, whether it would have come out of an SMR or any other process. It's syngas. So this is completely proven. It's the balance of plant. There's nothing new about it. These two are identical. So there's a lot of knowledge about that. And these can absolutely be delivered in modular trucks. And what happens with that 120 tons? Eventually delivers 11 tons of pure hydrogen, green hydrogen per day. Now, again, we're hearing a lot of numbers, so maybe this 11 sounds very small, but let me tell you, going back to the Canadian facility, the biggest one out there right now, this 11 tons is actually 1.5 times as big as the one in Canada.
Hi, Vita. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Looking at the facility that's currently underway,
Easy as never.
we have the Lancaster facility in California, and this one takes 120 tons of unrecycled paper as feedstock, converts it into the aforementioned 11 tons of very pure green hydrogen, and it's designed to operate for at least 335 days. Again, we absolutely know it's going to be 350 days. We feel very confident about that. And here you can see the partners in all renewable projects. As a previous speaker, Thibault already mentioned, it's always about partners. So here you can see the feedstock company, the syngas, Fluor doing the design, Air Liquide coming in there for the oxygen plant. Stark, as a company, we're providing the O&M, and at this very moment providing the O&M input into the feed. And that's to make certain that they don't just build a plant that works, but also a plant that's operable and maintainable during 25 years of operation. Munich is there for the performance guarantees, and Shell and Ituani are the off-takers. And I believe, yes, here we have the signing ceremony last September. Shell did it just before, but this is the signing ceremony of Iwatani, and basically getting ready for this project. And it's not just this prospect in Lancaster. The next one was probably be in Paradise, and they already have signed up a major financer for the next 5 projects. And that is, unfortunately, it was last week that it was finished, and the official announcement will come out. But so this is completely, it has the off-takers and it's financially secure, and we're getting ready to really roll it out. So now just a little side-by-side comparison. Again, I'm putting these numbers up there because I don't know about you, but I've heard so many numbers. So I'm just going to put 2 things apples to apples here. So if you're looking at this 3,800 ton per year, which is 11 tons per day, of plasmatification and electrolyzer next to each other. And first of all, you look at water usage. And one of the speakers earlier was mentioning about water. It will become more and more a precious resource. So especially if it has to be so ultra clean, as Thibault also mentioned, making it clean enough for electrolyzers really requires even more water. But the plasmatification requires less, because it's not where you get your hydrogen for. It's only needed for the water shift reaction and not as the primary source for the hydrogen hydrogen atom. So you need less water, electricity. As I mentioned, dislocating that hydrogen atom out of water takes a lot of electricity, and no scaling is going to really happen. Economies of scale will help avoid that. In the case of plasmification for those torches, a lot less green energy is required. So still green energy required, don't get me wrong, but a lot less, factor 8. Looking at the plot space, and in this case, I'm just going to say these are the numbers for Lancaster in California, and they happen to be already a green source of electricity to about 30,000 megawatts per hours per year. So all they needed to put down there was a facility. But in the case of electrolyzer, they had to have a whole new solar field to create this vast amount of electricity. So in this case, in California, a lot more land was needed. In other places where also this electricity has to be green, of course, this number will go up, but certainly not to this level. From a cost perspective, and again, because of the electricity price and other factors playing in there, electrolyzers, this has been confirmed by lots of speakers earlier today, it's around $8 for electrolyzers, but already in Salina, in Lancaster, we're seeing the price most probably between $2 and $3 per kilogram. Apart from that, of course, you also waste will be avoided. And on top of that, if you then add it all up, the carbon intensity of electrolyzers is of course phenomenal. It's zero or near zero, but it's the plasmification, especially because it helps avoid fugitive emissions later on in the landfill. It's actually negative in the case of Lancaster, where the feedstock was paper. So huge opportunity for plasmification. Now, before you think again, I said additional, I really don't want to at all be negative about electrolyzers. Actually, I think this is such a nice image. They can actually sit together. Just think of all that oxygen currently going into the air in those electrolyzers, and they can fantastically be used in the plasmification process, driving down cost further and allowing us to achieve this energy transition. Because such vast amounts have to be made. We can't just settle on one method. We have to really apply the full suite out there. I mean, one of the speakers mentioned, we have to be colorblind. I say, no, we've got to purposely move away from the gray and purposely add blue. I really agree with Vernon. Short term, we have to go blue. There is no alternative. Also look at turquoise. Yes, we should be open to pink. This, of course, it doesn't happen overnight that you get a little nuclear reactor, but watch out for the small modular reactors. I think they can really be a game changer in the next decade. Of course, look at water electrolysis, but also look at waste to hydrogen. We need them all to achieve this challenge we have ahead of us. There is so much hydrogen needed, especially in Trinidad, which is a huge user in the world arena of hydrogen. And to make that happen, we really need to honestly look at all things and not just bet on one horse. So recap, vast amounts of hydrogen are needed for the future energy mix. Electrolysis can't do this alone. Most companies, let's be honest, countries have landfill challenges. And these are not going to get better either over time. And lastly, we really believe that at $2 to $3 per kilo of this greener than green hydrogen from waste could be the game changer to ramp up production in the short term. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for their attention. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out after me or during the chat. We're more than willing to bring you into contact with the technology provider who's behind this and to help get over this energy transition and get it moving. Thank you for your attention.